Trump's tax plan, relief or risk for Americans. The comeback, Trump's return to power. The night of November 5, 2024, was one of tension, disbelief, and, for many, déjà vu. The race had been tight, too tight. With just 1.5 percentage points separating victory from defeat, Donald J. Trump had done what many thought impossible. He had reclaimed the presidency. For months, the polls had wavered, pundits dismissed his chances, and critics declared him politically finished. But Trump, ever the showman, never saw himself as the underdog. His rallies, larger than before, pulsed with energy. His messaging, about an America stolen from its people, resonated deeply with his base. He called it the greatest political comeback in history. The controversy erupts. Yet, as the results rolled in, the nation did not celebrate together. Protests erupted before the final ballots were counted. Legal challenges flooded the courts. Opponents labeled it a rigged system, echoing the very claims Trump himself had made in 2020. In blue states, crowds filled the streets in anger. In red states, fireworks lit up the night sky in celebration. The media, polarized as ever, painted two Americas, one that saw Trump as a returning savior, the other as a leader who never should have come back. Networks debated voter suppression, election integrity, and the role of social media in shaping public perception. But the numbers were final. The inauguration was set. January 20th, 2025, a speech for the ages. Today, we give the people back their faith, their wealth, their democracy, and indeed their freedom. Trump's second inaugural address was nothing short of defiant. Standing before a divided crowd, he promised to undo what he called the failures of the last administration. His supporters roared. His opponents seethed. The world watched. The first orders of business. He wasted no time. By the end of his first week, Trump had reinstated his America First economic policies, ordered an immediate crackdown on illegal immigration, signed executive orders reversing key climate and foreign policy measures, declared war on the mainstream media, calling for investigations into alleged censorship. The stock market reacted wildly. The Supreme Court braced for legal battles. Congress prepared for war. A nation on edge. In homes, workplaces, and on social media, America's great debate had reignited. Would Trump's return bring prosperity or chaos? His supporters saw a leader who had fought his way back to power against all odds. His critics saw a dangerous precedent. But one thing was clear: Donald Trump was back. And whether America liked it or not, his second term was just beginning. The first 100 days, aggressive action and pushback. The sun rose over Washington, D.C., but the city was anything but calm. Donald J. Trump was back in the Oval Office, and America was bracing for impact. For his supporters, it was a long-awaited return to strength. For his opponents, it was a political earthquake. Either way, one thing was certain: Trump wasn't wasting a second. A storm of executive orders. Within hours of being sworn in, the flurry of action began. Immigration was first. Executive Order Number 1. Construction on the border wall resumed immediately. Federal funding was diverted. States were warned. America's southern border was going to be sealed tighter than ever. Executive Order Number 2. A zero-tolerance policy on illegal immigration was reinstated. Deportations ramped up. Sanctuary cities were threatened with funding cuts. Executive Order Number 3. A new America First economic plan / corporate taxes and rolled back environmental regulations, aiming to fuel economic growth. The stock market surged, then stumbled. Wall Street cheered at the tax cuts but held its breath at the trade war threats. Companies scrambled to adjust. The backlash begins. The resistance was swift. Protests flooded the streets. In New York, in California, in Washington, tens of thousands marched against the immigration policies. Social media exploded with hashtags calling for impeachment. The lawsuits came next. Civil rights groups in Democratic-led states filed immediate legal challenges against the immigration orders. Federal judges blocked, reinstated, and blocked again as legal battles turned into political warfare. Congress, too, was in chaos. Republicans, torn between loyalty and pragmatism, struggled to keep up. Some cheered Trump's moves. Others worried he was moving too fast, too aggressively. Trump versus the media, the war intensifies. Cable news became a battleground. Every night, anchors clashed over Trump's policies. The media war escalated. The White House banned certain reporters from briefings, accusing them of spreading misinformation. Trump took to social media, firing back with his signature all-caps tweets. The economy, boom or bust. Markets fluctuated wildly. Investors celebrated tax cuts but worried about Trump's foreign policies. The Federal Reserve signaled uncertainty. Inflation concerns rose. Big businesses loved the deregulation. Small businesses feared instability. American workers, caught in the middle, waited to see whether Trump's economic gamble would pay off. The verdict? Divided as ever. By the end of the first 100 days, Trump's approval rating had soared among his base, but the rest of America remained deeply divided. Was he restoring America's strength or throwing it into turmoil? One thing was clear, Trump wasn't backing down, and the battle for his second term had only just begun. The political battlefield, allies and enemies. Washington, D.C. had seen political wars before, but never one quite like this. Donald Trump was back, and so was the chaos. His return to power wasn't just a victory. It was a reckoning. The GOP loyalty test. From the moment Trump stepped back into the Oval Office, the Republican Party was forced to choose, stand with him or risk being left behind. The Loyalists, MAGA hardliners, Jim Jordan, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Josh Hawley, stood firm. To them, Trump's return meant unfinished business, securing the border, reshaping the courts, and waging war against the so-called deep state. The hesitants, some Republicans, like Mitch McConnell and Mitt Romney, saw a different picture. They cautiously backed Trump's policies but feared his unpredictability. They worried his legal battles and media wars would cost them the Senate in 2026. The rebels, and then there were the defectors. Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, and a handful of moderates openly opposed him, calling his leadership divisive and dangerous. Trump, in classic form, responded by dubbing them traitors and vowing to crush them in the primaries. The Republican Party wasn't just split, it was a battlefield. Trump versus the media. The war intensifies. The press had never been kind to Trump. But this time, the fight was even uglier. Mainstream media networks hammered his policies daily. They called his executive orders autocratic. His immigration crackdowns were compared to authoritarian overreach. Social media wars erupted. Twitter/X reinstated his account, and within days, his all-caps posts were breaking the internet. Fake news is dying, but people know the truth. Trump's post went viral. Facebook and YouTube faced pressure to censor what critics called misinformation. But Trump's base fought back, accusing tech giants of silencing conservatives. Free speech was now a battleground. Legal warfare, the courts pushed back. Then came the Supreme Court battles. Trump's immigration policies challenged. His executive orders on social media regulations blocked. His crackdown on media bias under fire. Democrats, led by Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsom, filed lawsuit after lawsuit. Some courts sided with Trump, others didn't. But one thing was clear. Every major decision would be fought in the courts. A nation on the edge. By the 6-month mark, America wasn't just politically divided. It was an all-out war. Some saw Trump as the only one willing to fight the establishment. Others saw him as a threat to democracy itself. But love him or hate him, one fact remained. Donald Trump wasn't just leading the country. He was reshaping it. And the battle was far from over. America divided, the nation's response. 3 months into Donald Trump's second presidency, America was no closer to unity. If anything, the nation felt more fractured than ever. To some, Trump's return was a correction, a reclaiming of power stolen in 2020. To others, it was a nightmare repeating itself. One country, two realities. The polls tell a story. Surveys painted a picture of a deeply split nation. Trump's approval rating sat at 47%. It was higher than during his first term, but still a sign of a divided electorate. 88% of Democrats saw his presidency as a threat to democracy. 91% of Republicans believed he was saving it. Independents? They were torn. Some saw economic improvements, while others feared the social unrest. The streets erupt. If the polls show division, the streets proved it. MAGA rallies flooded red state capitals. Tens of thousands waved Trump 2024 the comeback banners. His base was more energized than ever, seeing this as the beginning of a new American revival. But in blue cities, the resistance was just as fierce. Protests shut down highways. Universities erupted in demonstrations. Activists labeled Trump's policies authoritarian and demanded his impeachment. Clashes between MAGA loyalists and anti-Trump protesters became commonplace. Police struggled to contain violent outbursts. Social media only fueled the fire. Conspiracy theories on both sides spread like wildfire. The global reaction, America on the brink? The world watched with nervous curiosity. China saw opportunity, calling U.S. democracy a failing system. European leaders distanced themselves, uneasy with Trump's policies on NATO and trade. Russia? Putin remained silent, but intelligence reports suggested the Kremlin saw a divided America as a strategic advantage. Some wondered, was this America's decline? The verdict? A nation holding its breath. As the 100-day mark passed, one truth became undeniable. Trump's return had reignited America's culture war. The question was no longer just about policy or leadership. It was about the soul of the nation, and no one knew how it would end.